go. I got a puppy down here. Just gave me the Frisbee, Zach. But we are live now. And hey, how we doing, everyone? Hope you are enjoying your Monday. Look, Ryan Ripken Show, we're usually live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But with deadline week for baseball, we're going live for news that's related to it or just big stories. And so the big story right now is that not a great day for Major League Baseball in general, Zach, but Emmanuel Clase, the all-star, everything closer for the Guardians, is now being put on non-disciplinary leave until August 31st. And why is that the case? He's under investigation for the same sports betting claims that his former teammate, if you guys remember a month or two ago, Luis Ortiz, was put on that same leave. So they are looking into, did Clase have anything to do in the sports gambling, sports betting side? So we're going to talk about that situation. And then really, honestly, it does impact the market because the rumor was Clase was available. Clase would be available to a high bidder, and all that goes away. And now the prices are going to be jacked up for other players here. So if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Ryan Ripken Show, but Zach, yeah. Dude, I thought we were just going to talk about the Bryce Harper and Rob Manfred situation, but seriously, I meant it. Bad day for Major League Baseball out the jump right now.
It is. Bad day is one way to put it. I mean, you have obviously the situation with Harper kind of take over the news cycle this morning, and you're like, okay, not a great look, but Bryce, we'll move past it. Another gambling, and I mean, let's call it what it is. This one is a little bit worse, in my opinion, for a few reasons. One, it's the same team. So that's not a good look for the Guardians, because now it's the question of, if both were doing it, how many others were doing it for the Guardians? But also, no, slight at Luis Ortiz, young up-and-coming pitcher, first year in Cleveland. Emmanuel Clase is kind of the belle of the ball when you talk about closers. There was Felix Bautista and there was Emmanuel Clase. Bautista got hurt. But over the last, I would say, 3-4 years, when you're talking about the best closer, you had to mention Emmanuel Clase. Then add on to that, Ryan, like you kind of said, this was a guy who could have been the quote-unquote missing piece for a few contenders. Price was high, but this now impacts a lot of things. One, it impacts the Guardians. It impacts other teams that are looking to trade for him. And this is not a good look for baseball, and it impacts baseball in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, on a grand scheme, we can attack it from different ways, but we will talk about on the trade side, because relievers, starting pitchers are at a premium of this deadline as it was. But now if you're taking out the crown jewel of relievers, because Felix Bautista would have been in that category, but we had heard it before, Zach, like that would have taken a king's ransom. Probably would have taken a king's ransom for Clase as well. But I think teams would have been even more willing for Clase, just given the fact of his recent track record, not coming off of an injury the year prior, and teams had seen him dominate. And not just for like a couple years, like we've seen with Felix, dominate for years, plural. And now that all shifts, and now teams are going to have control on what they want to do. By the day, teams are becoming more sellers than they are buyers. We'll explain that, but let's go down the grand scheme of things here. So I'm going to pull up on the tweet if you missed it earlier. So this was Jeff Passan about an hour ago, that Cleveland Guardians closer Emmanuel Clase has been placed on non-disciplinary paid leave as part of MLB's sports betting investigation. Like we mentioned before, second Guardians pitcher on leave tied to the investigation, joining right-hander Luis Ortiz. And this is going to run through August 31st. So exactly, the Guardians aren't out of it yet either. So like the grand scheme, like for this whole thing, Guardians not only are not going to trade Clase now, even if they weren't going to trade him, the Guardians are not going to have their guy for the next month if everything goes according to plan. Now, of course, they could come back here and say, well, the conclusions are that he's fine or whatever. You got to expect to not have him until September. That's a huge blow on that side. Now, on the grand scheme of baseball, and Zach, so every spring training. So for those that don't know my background, that might be new to the channel, I know I see a lot of our regulars in the chat, so you guys know me. I played 8 years professionally, got up to the AAA level. Been around the game my entire life. The one conversation that we have every spring training, we go over, I should say it's one, we go over a bunch of different things, Zach. From performance enhancing, what products you got to be careful of, how to make sure you're not put in any position to be in a sticky situation. And then we have a gambling one, which we have every single spring training. And the number one rule is, even when gambling got brought into baseball, Zach, where people have seen that it's just a part of everyday life now, right? Mm-hmm. The conversation was before, don't gamble on anything, period, because you know the ramifications. And then when baseball brought gambling in, it says other sports, you should be fine. Baseball, zero tolerance, no matter what, as long as you play the sport, as long as you want to play, you cannot gamble on anything. You can't have any involvement. You can't give any inside information because of the integrity. So there's a big difference. And I know, Zach, people throw out the claim of MLB caused this problem. And to an extent, they did, because you allowed it. But also, it's very black and white. Like, being a player, there is nothing that was left for debate, Zach. If you gamble in anything with baseball, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You will be prosecuted. And the craziest thing here, Zach, and you mentioned it, no knock to Luis Ortiz. But you know how bad it would be? Could you imagine if Clase is really caught up in this and he is banned?
Yeah.
MLB would have to do it because it's zero tolerance. You would have to do it. But damn, dude, that might be the wake-up call that would scare the hell out of people that are caught up in this situation.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to have to be there's going to have to be an example. That's the thing. And I think that this could, if he does end up being guilty, of it, this could be a massive hit for not only, the Guardians, but for baseball. This is a top guy, a top closer that is involved. This isn't, you have a few bench players. Like, I know, I'll bring it up in the NBA. You've seen a few guys, and every time the news is up, you've seen some role players. You've seen some bench guys, taking their unders. This is a very prominent top-of-the-line player that now suddenly, if he's got to be made the example of, you're a baseball player, it's, hey, nobody is safe. Kind of like you said, if you set that example, that precedent, there's no tolerance, zero tolerance. And top players are getting tossed. They're out of it. That does, will kind of set the standard. It just is. It worries me that this is just the beginning. It very much worries me that this is the beginning. And I'm sure if you talk to anyone in Major League Baseball, they are also worried that this is just the beginning, which is probably why they need to make an example. They need something to happen. They need to get one of these guys and, take him out of baseball. Because if that doesn't happen, it's not going to stop anyone. If they think it's just a slap on the wrist for doing it, they're going to take their chances. So I can't stress this enough. This is a bad day for baseball. This is a bad day for baseball.
It's bad. The other side of it was, obviously the Bryce Harper, Rob Manfred article that Jeff Passan also just put out like 30 minutes prior to that, or an hour prior to that. And we know the CBA, and for salary cap discussions, we can talk about that. We'll talk about that a lot more tomorrow. We can touch on it a little bit today, Zach. But the main thing is, this is where the world is. And for players, I want to make this clear. When you are playing in baseball, And this is your choice. It's the same thing with like anything in like your job allows you to do, right, Zach? So like one of the things I like to explain to people, okay? If you were going to get offered to play baseball, or you're going to get offered by a company some really incredible opportunities, but it's a private company playing in Major League Baseball, they have rules and guidelines that might not subject to what the rest of the other workplaces are. Every group has their own rules for working there. So, I look back at the NFL, like, was it a decade ago now or more than that, when Josh Gordon on the Cleveland Browns,
Yeah.
Dude had one of the most unbelievable seasons for a wide receiver with all the quarterbacks that they had. Right, Jason Campbell being the one that was the most throwing in passes, but Josh Gordon was flirting with almost 2,000 yards. Zach. Like he was going for the record.
Yeah.
And what was his Achilles heel? It was substance abuse, a lot with weed, marijuana, and the Browns essentially and teams were like, "Hey, we'll pay you, but you can't smoke or you can't use the recreational drugs." And we've seen around like the country then over the years since then. Certain states had rules, but in baseball, Zach, where I was going to, and I told you this, if you weren't on the 40-man roster, meaning, the 40-man protects anyone in the big leagues, and the 14 players that are in the minor leagues that are on the 40-man, you were subject to get tested for weed and marijuana. And if you got popped, you had to face the disciplinary actions of it. And people can argue to the cows come home about, well, hey, it's legal in some places. Doesn't matter. You sign up for this job.
Yeah.
You have to abide by those rules. For Josh Gordon's case, cost him a chance, Zach, to make millions and millions. Now, did he resurrect his career to an extent? Sure. But the damage was done on that front. Now with baseball here, I know MLB and everyone wants to blame MLB for this. It's every league now. Sports betting is in every single thing. It's up to the players now. And I think with Clase, Zach, the reality, I want to pull up his contract, and we're not going to jump to conclusions. Maybe this is nothing, right? Maybe it is. But right now, he just was coming off of, he's already made $15 million in the bigs. And he had a $20 million extension that he signed. He's getting paid $10 million the next 2 seasons. So whatever it is, he is now sacrificing $20 million.
Yeah.
For that. So blame baseball, blame sports betting all you want. The players are going to have to be the ones accountable. And I know everyone goes to the Ohtani thing, Zach. And I'll tell you what, that if it ever came out that it was Ohtani, God, that would have ruined the game. But I don't think it's fair to go to the conspiracy and say that it was on Ohtani. And guess what? Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. None of that was on baseball, correct?
No.
His interpreter?
Yeah,
There's a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's 2 very different things. And then the FBI was investigating. So I don't think it's fair to Ohtani for how everyone can think. Like the FBI actually investigated it. And we're like, no, like this is actually a crime. And it's a way different story. Clase, it looks a lot more direct. There's nothing else coming out with that. So, Zach, I wanted to emphasize that because I think people missed that point on this whole conversation. You have a choice.
Yeah.
Players have a choice. I don't care. Temptations are left and right. It's your choice at the end of the day. Now, they say Zach, no press is bad press, right? Except this is bad.
Yeah, this is really bad. I mean, you can't have. I mean, like, let's also call it what it is. This is now the 3rd time in 15, 16 months, 17 months that baseball has been involved in a gambling thing and with players gambling. Now, these are players gambling in games that they were participating in and in something that they can control. So it makes it even worse. And then when it comes down to it, the name means something. Emmanuel Clase, one of the top guys in the league, and we can talk about, in a moment how it impacts the trade market, but this is just a bad look. This isn't like I was saying with the NBA where it's like, oh, okay, there's some bench players doing things like, that's definitely still illegal, still can't happen. But it would be different if suddenly, the NBA came out and like a guy like Jason Tatum or someone was caught gambling. Then you're like, oh, wow, like this is, and, we can talk about, oh, it's just a reliever. It's a reliever that comes in the most important moments of the game. And if you don't think that he could maybe, it looks like this, we don't know what they're investigating, but whether it's first pitch strike ball, whether it's, run differential, whatever it is, there is that is a guy who is in clear control and can control the outcome of a game. So it does, really ring, I guess, the panic bell of, okay, what's next? Because, we've talked about they need an example. We've talked about how, something is going to happen, because if it doesn't, I genuinely believe this is just the beginning of it.
It very well could. But right now, what we know is the Guardians, if you're a Guardians fan, I'm sorry. We're talking about the struggles that Cleveland has tried to get over the hump. And they've had good teams, right? Last year in the ALCS, you are a few wins away from going to the World Series. And now you're on the cusp of, well, we might have traded our closer, but we're kind of hanging in there to now is, are we going to lose him for good? Is this going to be done? And the Guardians are Guardians fans, man, I'm sorry. It stinks. And it also it hurts the team on opportunity. So let's talk about the trade market then, Zach, here. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Ryan Ripken Show. We're live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for now. We do a 2-hour show. So if you guys are new here, we chat about all that. But we are going live for breaking news this week throughout the course of it. And then Zach here after every Orioles game or every other breaking news, you're going to see pop up here in the future, a little Kevin and Zach react. Anytime the Orioles, or it's Ravens being out of Baltimore, or any big news, head on over to that channel and hit the like and subscribe button. But this is big for the trade market, Zach, because relief pitchers are premium. Closers are the premium. And now take him off the list. And then you saw just a couple weeks ago with Felix Bautista, or last week, being put on the IL.
Yep.
High leverage relievers are going to be a thing. And actually, if we're going to stick with Baltimore actually has a couple that are on the market still. One of them they just shipped off in Gregory Soto to the Mets.
Yeah.
And then where else am I going with this? Sir Anthony Dominguez actually becomes a very premium option because of the power stuff that he has. Another team, if they were to change their mind, the Twins having Duran out of the bullpen, he becomes the most sought after quote unquote relief pitcher in my mind as for a closer. But Zach, I mean, if we thought Dominguez may or may not get moved, a desperate team very well might overpay for Sir Anthony because he can run his fastball up to 100. Plus, his splitter and off speed has been tremendously better. Oh, and by the way, he has postseason experience. So this Clase deal is going to change up a lot of things, how teams approach the deadline.
Yeah, and I think it also, I mean, you brought him up. I think one of the biggest, if there is a quote-unquote winner in this news, it's the Minnesota Twins. One, Clase is not going to be pitching against you or in your division for the foreseeable future. But two, you brought up Duran and Griffin Jacks, two high-leverage relievers, very sought after. The price is going up. That was kind of seen as if Clase didn't get moved, or he got moved to the Dodgers, Yankees, wherever you may see it. Then the next thing would be trying to pry those guys from Minnesota. Well, Clase is now completely off the board. He's not getting traded, none of that. So now the Twins hold potentially two of the prized possessions in the reliever pool on their team. Like you also brought up, it helps the Orioles a lot because now let's say the Twins go and win 2 straight, the next 2, and suddenly they're like, you know what, maybe we can make a run, and they hold off. It quickly, as the deadline gets closer, very, very quickly could Sir Anthony Dominguez start turning into a top 3, 4 arm available on the market as a reliever. The power arm this year, he looks fantastic. I mean, the strike or the walk percentage is really the only thing that you shy away from. But even in that, it's been his whole career. That you give and take. It's the give and take with Sir Anthony Dominguez. I don't know if there are, if the Orioles were planning on no matter what getting rid of Sir Anthony. I thought he was a guy that could potentially get an extension, but the offers still just at this point might be too good to refuse because these teams now that need a closer, need a back-end reliever, the biggest option is off the board. So that means options 2 through 5 suddenly move up. And as numbers start dwindling down, the price to get these guys is going to go up. So it's a big win for teams like the Twins, teams like the Orioles, and any team that's trying to sell off some high-end bullpen arms. It just went up a lot. So I think in that case, it impacts the deadline tremendously.
Oh, tremendously is an understatement because with so many teams now in it, Zach, the sellers are the ones that are going to make out the most with it. Now, a lot of teams don't want to pay a price. But a lot of those big markets, like I'm seeing the reports pop out here, right? Left and right. This team's going to be really aggressive. Oh, this team is willing to really add a big piece in the bullpen. They're going for it. There are going to be teams that are going for it. And also, be honest, too, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I mean, media is media for a reason. Like, it's going to stir up some conversation. Some teams want to put out rumors or thoughts just to get things moving. So we're not going to be naive to all of that, but just look at the market and look at what happened last year when you traded for certain players. Tanner Scott as a rental went for like 4 prospects, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of players that teams could want, but how much do they want to pay for it? So like with the Orioles, Andrew Kittredge as a veteran becomes desirable with the club option. And Sir Anthony Dominguez, who's a rental, is all just very appealing from what he's done this year. I know guys like Cano's been a down year for the Orioles, but he's got good stuff. Good stuff. Some teams could still have a value there. But I mean, we're really just starting to have things cook. Like this thing just catapulted the stress that's going to go around Major League Baseball. Because I think for a while, some team could have floated the idea of maybe the price have dropped. Could they have done something else? But now teams are realizing, the market might be closing. You don't want to miss out on a guy that you really like. And that's why we keep going back to some of these relievers where I don't think by any means Kittredge would break the bank.
Yeah.
Zach, Soto went for the 19th prospect for the Mets, and obviously Cameron Foster, who's proven to be a very solid relief arm right now in the upper minor league ranks. But desperate teams will put out more.
And that's why I think as if this happened on July 1st, I think this is a lot different. I do. I think this happening on July 28th, 3 days before the trade deadline, does impact things a little bit more because it does kind of feel like it added pressure. Because if you were in talks for Clase, it's very much now, okay, where do we go now? It's not, if it happened July 1st, teams are like, okay, he's not available, whatever, we move on. Now it kind of feels like if teams were kind of planning on going after him, it's, okay, where do we go for, the second option? And right, I mean, I'm not sure how many teams and how long people have been aware of this, but like, I keep thinking back, let's say the Guardians, they kind of got hot for a little bit, obviously beat the Orioles 3-4. if they didn't, and what if Clase would have been traded last weekend? Like it coming out now, like the Major League Baseball is also lucky it came out now and not August 1st. Because could you imagine if there was a blockbuster trade that sent Clase to the Dodgers or the Yankees or something, and then 2 days after he's on the under investigation? That would then also, we want to talk about things that would have shook up MLB. But it really does. It happening this close to the deadline really does, I think, change things and kind of shift pressure onto teams.
Oh, yeah. It's a blessing for a lot of the teams that had any inquiry on Clase. It's the last thing you want. This is the part around the deadline when you're looking at a team that's going to make a run or you're looking for the future, because that's the two things people make moves at the deadline for. Make a push or you're investing in your future years. And typically, if you're winning now, you want to do it right. Meow, Zach. It is guys that are more veteran, that you know what you're getting. There isn't this unpredictability. Now, however, we know that some players can get traded elsewhere and just shit the bed. Like that's sports, right? You could have a down moment and have a bad second half or last 2 months of the year. Nothing can stop that, but teams have more confidence in guys that have been around, like Cedric Mullins. Congrats to Ceddy, by the way, hitting his 100th homer and joining the Orioles. The short list of players that have had 100 homers and had 100 bags in his as a member of the Orioles organization. People eye the veterans. They eye the veterans because they know they're not going to waver as much with the unpredictability. Now, the other side of it is team control. You know, teams could make moves to hold on to guys or to reserve for the future. And actually, when we're talking about the decisions and where teams were at, there was rumors for like a hot minute, because it turned out to be diffused really quickly, was that the Royals would move Seth Lugo. And you know how the Royals said, haha, great rumor, we're going to extend him.
Yeah.
And they did. So the Royals take that rumor mill and shut it down, but that was a market that Seth Lugo's market would have been red hot, Zach, would have been scorching hot. But the Royals sit 4 games out. They're investing in him 2 more years. It's like stuff like that around the deadline. And the crazy thing is, Zach, you know, I'm going to pull up the wild card in the American League and National League here. There is a lot of teams that still think they're in this thing.
Oh, like, and that's such a benefit to the teams that are selling. I mean, you want to talk about what everyone thinking they're still in it is good. But yeah, continue.
I mean, the Rays apparently, I was seeing Ken Rosenthal say the Rays might feel like they're sellers. They might. The Rays are the Rays, right?
But the Rays are going to sell even if they have 100 wins. I never believe. Like they're just.
And they overall they played well this year. I still believe in them. I think they do a great job as an organization. But look at Texas now catching fire, you know. But right there, if you want to cut off, I'll say Kansas City at 4 games. Angels, they're kind of, that's that realization like we're still not there. But in the American League, counting the 3 teams that are leading the wild card with the Mariners, it looks like has a slight tiebreaker. So you have 7 teams within 4 games of a spot right there. And then you go to the National League side, and let's cut it off at the Cardinals, right? So you're looking at 6 more teams. So 13 teams are on the wild card side thinking they're still in it. Then you go in to add the division leaders, right?
That's 19 teams.
So 2/3 of the league might think that they're buying. You know, Tampa's saying they might sell, but even if a couple of these teams sell, half the league, Zach, still might buy. So that's the part that I think is good to monitor here. And like Philly, Philly's going to be aggressive, no doubt. Milwaukee can kind of do whatever the hell they want. They're a damn good team. Padres are going to try to make a move. That's been their MO. And then Cincinnati has a young core that they don't want to fully blow up because they have pitching prospects that are really good for them. You know they're not going to try to spend that. So you know, it's a very, very interesting conversation, but I'm glad we could highlight it that way, where a lot of teams are going to want players, man. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah,
Tell
and
you that.
actually, Jim Bowden was just on Foul Territory, and he said that Clase was getting traded. He pretty much said that that was the plan,
Wow.
and he said it's a massive miss, if anything, for the Guardians because this was supposed to be kind of a deal that helped them rebuild the foundation of their farm system and organization through hopefully getting 2 or 3 top prospects in a Class A deal that can help, maybe shift their focus. But that's a big loss for two teams because the Guardians, whoever they were going to get, and then whoever was going to trade for Class A, now both teams have to figure it out. So I think this was a massive shift in the trade deadline. I think this is going to impact it. Hell, you brought up Lugo as well. A lot of players that people thought were going to be on the market are not on the market, and it's going to force teams to have to maybe overpay a little bit.
Maybe overplay a lot. And you might see names, and that's why, like, you might see names in the past year where you go, why the hell is this guy acquired? Well, they made a depth move and they didn't want to give up the goods.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's the trade deadline's fascinating. Major League Baseball, everything about it's fascinating. We didn't really talk about it much today. Maybe we'll wrap it up quickly with that, Zach, on, down the road here, MLB is going to have this whole collective bargaining agreement and salary cap talk where all of that can change how deadline and the perceptions of how trades and moves will happen because that'd be a brand new system. Having said that, though, I think we'll see a strike for 3 to 5 years before we see players agree to a salary cap with minimal floors. I actually did a quick selfie video on that, Zach. Right now, just under half the league has a payroll of 150 million or less. Ironically, I know a lot of people get on Baltimore. Baltimore's not one of those teams right now, by the way. Now, do they have money invested in some former players? Sure.
Yeah.
But half the league right now, Zach, is essentially under $150 million payroll. So if there was ever going to be a salary cap discussion, that payroll floor has to be at 150 million from the jump. Has to be.
Salary floor is going to help the league more than a salary cap because people want to talk about, you need to stop the Dodgers from spending. You need to stop the Yankees from spending. The reality is they're not necessarily spending any more than they ever have. When you talk about percentage wise, the biggest thing is the bottom teams that aren't spending at all. The Pirates in their last 10 years have been over $100 million one time. And I think it was a mistake because they're at 100.5 million. So it's like, it's the teams that are refusing to spend that are the biggest issue, not the team. I am all for having owners who are like, hey, I want to go win this bad. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. What I don't like, and I think is bad for baseball, is the owners who are like, hey, I'm using this as to make money and I don't want to spend. I don't want to do this. I'm the, whether you want to put on the Pirates, the Athletics, and it's just bad for baseball when you have some teams spending 250, 300 million, and then you have other teams spending 60. If you set a floor and everyone has to be spending $150 million plus, I think that is where you can really start teams because then you have to. We got to find $30 million to spend somewhere. So let's go grab this guy, and this guy because we have to spend it anyway. We might as well get production out of it.
Yeah. Well, and this is the part of it. Like, this is the argument of why players would hate this. Is explain why owners like the Pirates and Marlins would spend more than with the salary cap. This is the worry with players is how can they be convinced that half the league is going to increase their payroll by having a salary cap? Because the way it is for people to understand this, and I will talk about this again, Zach, at a different time. But if you get to the big leagues, essentially you got to go through 6 years before you become a free agent, essentially, right? You can get extended beforehand, but you have to wait 3 years to go until you get to arbitration. And then that's essentially where the team and the player go to an arbitrator if they can't come to an agreement on what your value is for a season. So players have to get 6 years before they get to really make bank, like really cash in. And no one's going to feel sorry, Zach, for a player making 750 or 780,000, which is the league minimum. But we're talking about players maximizing their value, because although people want to point out that, hey, like, you get to do this for a living, I also want to point out that this is the 1% of the 1% of the people that are good enough to play this sport and to do this and make a living. So for them, they feel just like anyone, you want to maximize your opportunity.
Yeah.
This is how you maximize. And players have a distrust that if there was a salary cap that would be reached, that it would still be in their best interest. I think the only way is you would have to set a high floor. And to your point of it, I don't know if owners love that concept, but that's what it's going to have to take to have that even be in the realm. Because I do believe that that the big markets, Zach, are going to have certain money and thresholds that others don't. Every ownership and situation is different. But players, MLBPA has had so much control. Do you think they just want to give up power just so they feel that it can make that owners can make a little bit more money or make it more fair? Because you ask the players, they would say, well, this deal that they're proposing, that's not fair to us at all, especially how much you've made off of us before some of us have gotten a chance to cash in big.
Yeah, and I think John makes a good point here, and it's kind of what we're talking about. You know, if you're going to make a salary cap, it's going to be set probably in that 300 to 400 million. You know, I would assume somewhere in that range to start. Well, the Dodger, the team everyone's complaining about, is at 340 million right now. Does capping the Dodgers from spending an extra 60 million, or let's say they set at 300 and the Dodgers have to get rid of $40 million. That's not going to change the fact that lower teams are spending 60 million. You know, having the Dodgers have to get rid of $40 million in cap doesn't solve the issue of some teams aren't spending. If you set the cap at 300, 350, you're going to keep the Dodgers around 340 million, the Mets at 332, the Yankees at 295, Phillies at 286. Like those, and then Toronto round out the top five at 248. Those top end teams, they're going to keep their salaries the same. That doesn't necessarily change anything on how they're spending. But the biggest thing is it doesn't change the spending for the Pirates, for the Athletics, for these other teams that are currently at the bottom, with Miami at 68 million, Athletics 77, White Sox 78, Pittsburgh 88, Tampa Bay 90, Cleveland at 102. It's not going to start suddenly, you know, there's not going to be a cap at 300 million. And suddenly these other teams are like, oh, well, now that the cap's 300 million, I'm going to spend 300 million. It's not how it works. A floor is going to do much better for the league than a cap. Make people spend 150. I mean, that would literally be, you want people to spend more instead of the Dodgers having to get rid of 40 million and just put it off on another team. How about you make the Marlins have to go spend $82 million more next year? Because I'll tell you, the Marlins, which are a fun young team right now, you add $82 million worth of assets to them next year. Tell me that can't be a very fun, competitive team that's already fun and competitive, can't go to a next level if they just spent. There's where that we want to see some parity, the league be quote unquote more even, although you look at the standings, it's pretty damn even right now. But salary wise, it's not going to be capping the top teams on how much they spend. It's going to be putting a floor on the bottom teams on, hey, you got to reach this certain number.
Yep, and it's a long conversation we'll continue to have. That CBA is not for another year plus. and we'll get into all of that when the time comes. We'll talk about it more tomorrow on the show. We'll be live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at our normal scheduled time, 2:30 to 4:30. We do have some great guests lined up for tomorrow. So our Holy Shirts and Pants members of the channel, I will notify you guys that just this afternoon to let you guys know. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. The Ryan Ripken Show. Hey, we talk a lot of baseball during the spring and summer. We got a lot of football in the fall. And yes, baseball is the backbone. So we do have some great interviews and legends of the game. Sat down with Ken Griffey Jr., Will Clark, Larry Walker, Craig Biggio, Eddie Murray, Jim Palmer, and we got a whole heck of a lot more that are coming your way. So don't worry. These baseball conversations are never going away. But we like to have fun here, and we're based out of the Maryland region. All right, guys, that's all we have for now. I mean, who knows, Zach? We might have a breaking news in 5 minutes.
You never know this time of year.
And then we'll be like, well, here we are again. So appreciate that. Appreciate our channel members. Click that join button if you want to be a part of it. And I would say have a day, have a night, but we might see you a little bit later here on the Ryan Ripken Show. So I'll just say, be good. Bad day for Major League Baseball, but if you're a baseball fan, everything's just heating up until Thursday at 6 p.m. It's only going to get spicier.
What a time to be alive.
What a time. See you guys.